And remember when a dollar could stretch for a week and nothing ever went to waste? Our grandmothers knew secrets about living well on less that we've somehow forgotten in our disposable society. Today we're exploring 25 time-tested frugal living hacks that helped previous generations thrive through tough times and can save you thousands today. Let's start with make-your-own cleaning products. Back in Grandma's day, there wasn't a specialized cleaner for every surface in the house, and she certainly didn't spend $20 on fancy bottles of chemicals. Instead, she kept a few simple ingredients that could tackle any mess. White vinegar cost about 15 cents a gallon in the 1950s, and mixed with water at a 1-to-1 ratio, it cleaned windows better than any store-bought solution. Add baking soda to that vinegar, and you've got a powerful scrubbing paste that cuts through grease, soap scum, and stubborn stains. Lemon juice served as nature's bleach, brightening whites and removing rust stains. A typical household today spends over $600 annually on cleaning products, but Grandma's entire cleaning arsenal cost less than $5 a year. She'd mix Castile soap with hot water for floors, use newspaper instead of paper towels for streak-free windows, and freshen carpets with a sprinkle of baking soda before vacuuming. News leftovers, creatively concept of throwing away food, was practically criminal in Grandma's kitchen. Every scrap had potential for another meal, and she treated leftovers like ingredients rather than afterthoughts. That Sunday roast chicken became Monday's chicken salad, Tuesday's soup, and by Wednesday, even the bones were simmering into rich stock. Vegetable peelings went into a freezer bag to make vegetable broth later. Stale bread transformed into breadcrumbs, French toast, or bread pudding. She'd save bacon grease in a jar for frying eggs or seasoning vegetables. Even overripe bananas found new life in banana bread. The average American family throws away about $1,500 worth of food annually, but Grandma's generation wasted virtually nothing. She knew that yesterday's mashed potatoes made excellent potato pancakes, and leftover rice could become tomorrow's rice pudding or fried rice. And grow your own vegetables. Our victory gardens weren't just for wartime. They were a way of life that provided fresh produce and significant savings. Grandma's backyard garden, sometimes just a small plot, could yield hundreds of pounds of vegetables each season. A packet of tomato seeds costing a nickel in 1955 could produce 50 pounds of tomatoes, worth today's equivalent of $200. She knew which vegetables gave the best return: green beans, zucchini, lettuce, and herbs. Even apartment dwellers grew herbs on windowsills and tomatoes in containers on fire escapes. The soil preparation happened in early spring with composted kitchen scraps from winter. She saved seeds from the best plants each year, never needing to buy them again. Community seed swaps meant varieties were shared among neighbors. Today's grocery tomato might cost $3 a pound, but Grandma's cost only the water and her time. Reuse and repurpose items. Nothing in Grandma's house had just one purpose or one life. Glass jars from store-bought goods became storage containers for buttons, nails, and preserves. Feed sacks transformed into dish towels, aprons, and even dresses during the Depression. Old pantyhose became ties for tomato plants or filters for paint. Worn-out towels turned into cleaning rags, tin cans held pencils or became planters for starting seeds. She'd carefully remove wrapping paper from gifts to reuse next year. Empty cereal boxes became magazine holders or drawer organizers. Even aluminum foil got washed and reused multiple times. This mindset saved hundreds of dollars yearly and reduced household waste to almost nothing. What we now call upcycling was simply how things were done. Batch cook and freeze. Before meal prep became trendy, Grandma understood the economics of cooking in bulk. When ground beef went on sale at 19 cents a pound in 1960, she'd buy 10 pounds, brown it all, and freeze it in meal-sized portions. Sunday's cooking marathon produced enough meals for half the week. She'd make double or triple batches of spaghetti sauce, chili, and soup, freezing the extras in repurposed containers. Her freezer held homemade TV dinners before Swanson made them famous. This approach saved both money and time. Heating costs were lower for one long cooking session than multiple short ones. She knew that a pot of beans costing 50 cents could provide protein for a family for 3 meals. Every casserole recipe served 8 but fed 4, with the remainder frozen for busy nights. Sew and mend clothes. Every woman in Grandma's generation could sew, and most men could at least sew on a button. A small sewing kit prevented clothes from being discarded over minor damage. She'd darn socks rather than throw them away, patch knees on children's pants, and let down hems as kids grew. Sheets worn thin in the middle were cut in half and sewn together with the good sides in the middle, giving them years more life. Collars and cuffs on men's shirts were turned when they frayed. She made children's clothes from adult garments that had worn out. Flour sacks with pretty patterns became dresses. The average family spent less than $50 annually on clothing in the 1950s because everything was maintained and mended. A $5 sewing kit could save hundreds in replacement clothes. Use cloth instead of paper. Paper towels didn't become common until the 1970s, and Grandma never understood the waste. She had designated rags for different purposes: old underwear for dusting, worn towels for heavy cleaning, and soft flannel for polishing. Cloth napkins graced every table, getting washed with the regular laundry. Handkerchiefs lived in every pocket and purse. She used cloth diapers that were washed and reused hundreds of times. The initial investment in good quality towels and napkins paid for itself within months. A single roll of paper towels today costs $3 and lasts maybe a week. Grandma's cloth alternatives lasted decades. She even made her own sanitary products from cloth, washing, and reusing them monthly. Shop, secondhand, thrift stores, and rummage sales were gold mines for savvy shoppers like Grandma. She knew that wealthy neighborhoods had the best church rummage sales where barely worn designer clothes sold for pennies on the dollar. Children's clothes, which were quickly outgrown, were almost always bought secondhand. She furnished entire homes from estate sales and auctions. Books, dishes, small appliances, why buy new when perfectly good items were available for a fraction of the cost? She had no shame about secondhand shopping. It was smart economics. A winter coat that cost $40 new in 1965 could be found for $2 at a thrift store. Today's thrifting trend would make Grandma proud, though she'd be shocked at vintage store prices. Line dry laundry. The fresh scent of line-dried sheets was one of life's simple pleasures, but it also saved significant money. Electric dryers didn't become common until the 1960s, and even then, Grandma saw them as wasteful. Hanging laundry was morning meditation, and the sun's bleaching action kept whites bright without harsh chemicals. In winter, clothes dried on wooden racks near the radiator or on lines strung in the basement. She knew that dryers wore out fabric faster, and the heat set in stains that might have come out with another washing. Line drying could save $30 monthly on electricity bills. The physical act of hanging clothes also provided gentle exercise and fresh air. Clothespins were carefully maintained and brought in after each use to prevent weather damage. Make homemade bread. And the aroma of baking bread meant home and comfort. But it also meant savings. A 5-pound bag of flour costing 25 cents in 1955 could make 4 loaves of bread. Store bread cost 15 cents per loaf, so making it saved almost half. Grandma's bread had no preservatives, just flour, yeast, salt, and water. She'd bake once or twice weekly, making extra loaves to freeze. Day-old bread became toast, older bread became breadcrumbs or stuffing. She knew that kneading bread was therapeutic and that homemade always tasted better. The yeast was often maintained as a starter, passed down through generations. Even failed loaves weren't wasted. They became bread pudding or feed for chickens. Preserve food through canning. Canning season was serious business in Grandma's house. When tomatoes were 10 cents a pound at peak season, she'd buy bushels and spend days canning sauce, whole tomatoes, and paste. The basement shelves filled with jewel-toned jars of peaches, green beans, pickles, and jam. A pressure canner cost about $15 in 1950, but lasted generations. Each jar of preserves cost pennies to make, but would have cost dollars to buy. She knew exactly how long to process each type of food and never had spoilage. The satisfaction of opening homegrown, home-canned tomatoes in January was matched only by the money saved. Canning supplies were reused year after year, jars lasted decades, and only the lids needed replacing. Use vinegar for laundry. And before fabric softeners existed, Grandma used white vinegar in the rinse cycle. A cup of vinegar in the wash softened clothes, removed soap residue, and eliminated odors. It brightened colors and whitened whites without the harsh chemicals of bleach. Vinegar also cleaned the washing machine itself, preventing soap scum buildup. At 15 cents a gallon, it was far cheaper than any commercial laundry product. She knew vinegar could remove stubborn stains like grass and wine. Static cling wasn't an issue with line-dried clothes, but when she did use the dryer, vinegar prevented it. Pet odors, mildew smells, and cigarette smoke all surrendered to vinegar's power. And then turn off lights when not in use. Nan, were you raised in a barn? Grandma would ask anyone who left lights burning in empty rooms. Electricity was treated like the precious resource it was. She navigated her home in the dark rather than turn on lights for a quick trip. Natural light was maximized with open curtains during the day. Lamps were positioned strategically for task lighting rather than illuminating entire rooms. The family gathered in one room in the evening rather than spreading throughout the house with multiple lights on. She unplugged appliances when not in use, knowing they drew phantom power. The electric bill was scrutinized monthly, and any increase prompted investigation. This vigilance could cut electricity costs by 30%. News: leftover coffee grounds. Used coffee grounds were garden gold in Grandma's world. They went straight onto the compost pile or were worked into the soil around acid-loving plants like roses and azaleas. She'd dry them and use them as a deodorizer in the refrigerator, replacing baking soda. Mixed with soap, they became an effective scouring compound for tough cleaning jobs. Coffee grounds repelled ants and slugs in the garden. She even used them as a skin exfoliant, long before expensive coffee scrubs hit beauty stores. The coffee pot was never washed with soap, just rinsed and wiped with used grounds to maintain its seasoning. Reuse coffee. Filters and paper coffee filters were rinsed and dried for multiple uses before being discarded. But Grandma found dozens of other uses for them even after their coffee days ended. They became lint-free cleaning cloths for windows and mirrors. She used them to strain homemade nut milk and clarify butter. They protected china when stacked and wrapped Christmas ornaments for storage. Clean filters served as disposable snack bowls for parties. Used ones went into the compost. She even used them to polish shoes and silver. At today's prices of 10 cents per filter, reusing them multiple times added up to real savings. To make your own beauty products, and Grandma's beauty routine came from her kitchen, not a department store. Cold cream was made from mineral oil and beeswax. Sugar and olive oil created an effective body scrub. Honey and oatmeal made a soothing face mask. Egg whites tightened skin better than expensive serums. Mayo deep-conditioned hair. Cucumber slices reduced puffy eyes. She made her own rose water from garden roses. Petroleum jelly served dozens of purposes, from makeup remover to heel softener. A box of baking soda whitened teeth and served as deodorant. These simple ingredients cost pennies compared to commercial beauty products that could total hundreds of dollars annually. Unplug appliances. When not in use, on phantom power wasn't a term Grandma knew, but she understood that plugged-in appliances used electricity even when off. The toaster, mixer, and coffee pot were unplugged after each use. The television and radio were actually turned off, not left on standby. She knew that the clock on the microwave wasn't worth the constant power draw. This habit could reduce electricity bills by 10% or more. During storms, everything was unplugged to prevent damage from power surges. The only items left plugged in were the refrigerator and freezer. This practice also reduced fire risk from faulty appliances. And buy in bulk. And when flour came in 25-pound sacks and sugar in 10-pound bags, Grandma knew how to store them properly to prevent spoilage. She kept bulk goods in metal containers to prevent pests. Buying in bulk meant fewer shopping trips and lower per-unit costs. She split large purchases with neighbors when needed. A 50-pound bag of potatoes cost $2 in 1960 and could feed a family for weeks when stored properly in a cool, dark place. Rice, beans, and oats were always bought in the largest size available. She knew exactly how much her family consumed and bought accordingly, never wasting bulk purchases. And plan meals around sales. Grandma's menu planning started with the grocery store circular. If pork chops were on sale, that determined Sunday dinner. She knew the sales cycles of her local stores and planned major purchases accordingly. Turkey was bought after Thanksgiving when prices dropped. Canning supplies were purchased at end-of-season clearances. She kept a price book to track the best deals and knew when a higher sale wasn't really a bargain. Seasonal eating wasn't trendy, it was economical. Strawberries in June, apples in October, citrus in winter. She never paid full price for anything if she could help it. News. Tea bags. More than once. Single tea bag could make 2 or 3 cups of tea with decreasing strength. The first cup was for morning, the second for afternoon, and if there was a third, it was perfect for evening when less caffeine was wanted. Used tea bags were cooled and placed on tired eyes to reduce puffiness. They soothed minor burns and insect bites. Grandma knew that tea was antimicrobial and used old bags to clean and deodorize cutting boards. In the garden, used tea bags were buried near plants as slow-release fertilizer. The bags themselves, if paper, went into compost. Make-your-own soup, stocked or bought broth was an unknown luxury in Grandma's kitchen. Every chicken carcass, ham bone, and beef bone was simmered into rich stock. Vegetable trimmings were saved in a freezer bag until enough accumulated for vegetable stock. She'd simmer bones for hours, extracting every bit of nutrition and flavor. The resulting stock was strained and frozen in ice cube trays for easy portioning. This free ingredient formed the base of soups, gravies, and rice dishes. A store-bought can of broth that costs $3 today was made for free from items others threw away. She knew that homemade stock was more nutritious and flavorful than anything from a can. Reduce water usage, and water conservation was practiced even where water was plentiful. Grandma saved the water from boiling vegetables to water plants once it cooled. The nutrients were bonus fertilizer. Dishwater was done in order: glasses, plates, silverware, then pots, so the water stayed cleaner longer. Baths used less water than showers, and the whole family might use the same bath water in order of cleanliness. She collected rainwater in barrels for the garden. The toilet wasn't flushed for just urine. Teeth were brushed with the water off. These habits could reduce water bills by 40%. And buy generic brands, and brand loyalty was a luxury Grandma couldn't afford. She knew that many generic products were made by the same companies as name brands. Store-brand aspirin worked just as well as Bayer at a third of the cost. Generic flour, sugar, and salt were identical to name brands. She compared unit prices and ingredients, making informed decisions rather than falling for marketing. The plain label products in the 1960s saved 30 to 50% over advertised brands. This practice alone could save hundreds of dollars annually on groceries and household items. News. Old newspapers for cleaning nen before paper towels. Newspaper was the go-to for cleaning windows and mirrors. The ink acted as a mild abrasive, and the paper didn't leave lint. Grandma knew that slightly damp newspaper cleaned glass better than expensive products. She used newspaper to absorb odors in shoes and the refrigerator. It protected floors during painting and tables during messy projects. Crumpled newspaper helped maintain the shape of leather shoes and purses in storage. In the garden, layers of newspaper suppressed weeds. She even used it as gift wrap for casual occasions. What others saw as trash, she saw as a free resource. Unused freezer bags for storage. Plastic bags were washed and reused until they fell apart. Grandma would turn them inside out, wash with dish soap, and dry them on a wooden rack made specifically for this purpose. Bread bags became sandwich bags. Cereal bags, which were waxed paper inside, were perfect for freezing meat. She knew which bags were worth washing and which weren't. A single freezer bag might be used dozens of times before being retired to holding non-food items. This practice could save $50 or more annually on plastic bags. And thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane. If you enjoyed exploring these 25 frugal hacks, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.